Hi, I'm Congressman Scott Perry. At the beginning of each week that Congress is in session, I send out a brief update about the bills the House of Representatives likely will consider. The bills this week are as follows. H.R. 935, the Reducing Regulatory Burdens Act. This bill would prohibit the EPA from requiring national pollutant discharge elimination system permits for the use of regulated pesticides under the Clean Water Act. H.R. 4156, Transparent Airfares Act, which would allow air carriers to advertise the base cost of airfare and separately disclose the government taxes and fees associated with the ticket, as well as the total cost of the ticket. H.R. 4838, which redesignates the railroad station located at 2955 Market Street in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, commonly known as the 30th Street Station, as the William H. Gray III 30th Street Station. H.R. 3202, the Essential Transportation Worker Identification Credential Assessment Act, which directs the Secretary of Homeland Security to provide to Congress an assessment of the effectiveness of the Maritime Transportation Security Card Program. H.R. 3846, the United States Customs and Border Protection Authorization Act. This bill would authorize the U.S. Customs and Border Protection within the Homeland Security Act of 2002 for the first time. The authorization delineates and codifies within the Homeland Security Act all of the current authorities, responsibilities, and functions of the U.S. Customs and Border Protection. H.R. 3696, the National Cybersecurity and Critical Infrastructure Protection Act, which would codify and strengthen the National Cybersecurity and Communications Integration Center, a federal civilian interface to facilitate real-time cyber threat information sharing across critical infrastructure sectors. H.R. 2952, the Critical Infrastructure Research and Development Act, which makes several reforms to address gaps in the protection of critical infrastructure. H.R. 3107, the Homeland Security Cybersecurity Boots on the Ground Act, which requires the Secretary of Homeland Security to establish occupation categories for individuals working in furtherance of the Department of Homeland Security's cybersecurity mission. H.R. 3635, the Safe and Secure Federal Website Act. This bill prohibits agencies from deploying or making publicly available a new federal personally identifiable information website until the Chief Information Officer of the agency submits a certification to Congress that the website is fully functional and secure. H.R. 4919, which designates the facility of the United States Postal Service located at 715 Shawin Falls Drive in Dublin, Ohio, as the Lance Corporal Wesley G. Davids and Captain Nicholas J. Rosansky Memorial Post Office. Senate 1799, the Victims of Child Abuse Act, which amends the Victims of Child Abuse Act to authorize appropriations for programs designed to improve investigation and prosecution of child abuse cases. The legislation also amends current law to add additional accountability and audit requirements. H.J. Resolution 105, which confers honorary citizenship on Bernardo D. Galvez, E. Madrid, Viscount of Galvez, and Count of Valdez for his actions to help the United States colonists during the Revolutionary War. H.R. 4250, the Sunscreen Innovation Act. This bill amends the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act to provide an alternative process for review of safety and effectiveness of non-prescription sunscreen active ingredients. H.R. 594, the Paul D. Wellstone Muscular Dystrophy Community Assistance Research and Education Amendments, which amends the Public Health Service Act to update currently authorized surveillance, research, and education activities regarding muscular dystrophy to reflect current research and discoveries in this field. H.R. 1771, the North Korea Sanctions Enforcement Act, which expands existing sanctions against the North Korean regime, in particular against illegal weapons proliferation, human rights abuses, and other illicit activities. H.R. 4490, the United States International Communications Reform Act, which reforms the Broadcasting Board of Governors, the federal agency that oversees all U.S. civilian international media, including the Voice of America. H.R. 4994, Impact Act of 2013, which directs the Secretary of Health and Human Services to call for post-acute care providers to adhere to stricter reporting requirements. H.R. 4709, the Ensuring Patient Access and Effective Drug Enforcement Act, which aims to improve enforcement efforts related to prescription drug diversion and abuse. H.R. 4626, the SAFE Act, Confidentiality and Privilege Enhancement Act, which would ensure access to certain information for financial services industry regulators. H.R. 5062, the Examination and Supervisory Privilege Parity Act, which amends the Consumer Financial Protection Act to specify that privilege is maintained when information is shared by certain non-discretionary covered persons with federal and state financial regulators. H.R. 4809, which would reauthorize the Defense Production Act and improve the Defense Production Act Committee. H.R. 3896, to amend the Longshore and Harbor Workers' Compensation Act, which would define a recreational vessel under the Act as being manufactured or operated primarily for pleasure or leased, rented, or chartered to another for the latter's pleasure. H.R. 4315, the 21st Century Endangered Species Transparency Act, which requires the Secretary of the Interior or the Secretary of Commerce, as appropriate, to make publicly available on the Internet the best scientific and commercial data available that are the basis for the determination of whether a species is an endangered species or a threatened species. House Resolution 676. This bill provides for the authority to initiate litigation for actions by the President or other executive branch officials inconsistent with their duties under the Constitution of the United States. Finally, the House may possibly consider supplemental appropriations related to the situation along the southern border. As always, if you have any questions or if I may be of any assistance to you or your family in any way, please contact me at perry.house.gov. That's perry.house.gov. Again, I'm Scott Perry, and I hope you have a fantastic